Hello. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. My name's Munday. I'm a creative business lead for Google and a speaking coach. No pressure, Vanessa. And my mission is to help as many people as possible identify and express their true, authentic voice. And one of the ways I do this is bringing to the stage some voices that need to be heard. And Vanessa's is most definitely one of those. So thank you, firstly, MadFest, for having us.
Thank you.
And of course, thank you, Vanessa, for joining us today and sharing your story. Today's session is all about building your authentic brand. And we've asked Vanessa to share with us some of her top tips and tricks for how to cultivate a powerful personal brand that creates opportunities and leaves a lasting legacy. So to introduce Vanessa Kingori, OBE and MBE.
This is going to be awkward, isn't it? I'm just going to zone out for a second.
Which I understand is very rare to have both of those. And it doesn't stop there. In fact, I could fill this entire 20-minute conversation with all of Vanessa's incredible achievements. However, to mark a few, she previously was the Chief Brand Officer for Condé Nast, particularly responsible for brand revenue and brand strength. Vanessa was appointed this role in 2017, which made history. She was Condé Nast's first and only Black British publisher and British Vogue's first ever female business lead. She was listed one of the top most influential Black Britons and Media Mogul of the year 2017. And like I said, the long, long list continues. But we are most delighted that recently she joined Google as a managing director of technology, media, and telecommunications, helping Google's business partners drive profitable growth through our AI products and advertising solutions. And Vanessa, what I love most about you is through all of
is it
this,
over yet?
right? Through all of these vast amounts of incredible achievements, you are so grounded and authentic and real. And that's why I know this conversation is going to be such a great conversation for everybody to witness today. So thank you.
Lovely. It's great to be here. And I want to say thank you to all of you for being here at lunchtime on a sunny day after a miserable day yesterday. So you've already done like a lot of the work. I feel like we've got to bring our A game now.
That's it, no pressure. So come on, let's talk about Google. And we know Google approached you. So how much of that do we think is due to your high visibility brand? And I mean, has your brand helped you in other career moves? And what do you think stood out most to Google? Why did they choose you?
Firstly, do you know what's so interesting? Kay basically harangued me. I am in month 4 at Google, which is utter insanity. I'm just in a complete washer and I'm trying to, lead while learning, which is not for the weak. So when Kay approached me, I first thought, I'm not sure I have time. Then she said it was for Female Leaders Club, and I thought, oh, okay, you're pressing my buttons here. And then she said it's all about your brand, and I thought, I didn't know I had a brand. And then she said, do you have a huge brand? I was like, do I? I think that it's quite interesting thinking of who you are and how you turn up in the world as your personal brand, I think. I do think that when I unpack it, there were some conscious decisions I made around how I want to represent myself to the world and which aspects I think are important to communicate. Well, a lot of those are about the things that I've found aren't represented well. So I've learned over time with all of those firsts. I was also the first woman to lead GQ as its publisher. I was the first woman to lead Vogue, which blew my mind. The first person of color, not only the first Black person or Black woman. And so, it's like, well, I don't want to be the last. So it's really important to be visible and to show people what that looks like and to be really honest about it and not sugarcoat it too much. And so I think that there were elements that were conscious. I didn't really put it under the umbrella of branding, but of course that is what you're doing. So I think I tried to lean into areas that perhaps I didn't see well represented, and I wanted for people to understand. And where people were asking me, what's it like to? I thought, well, I have a social presence, and actually, rather than answering one person's question, I can answer 70,000 people's questions with the number of followers I have on one platform by just showcasing that. But to your question about Google, there was a bit of a courtship, because the other thing that I think is useful about leveraging your brand is when you want to enter into a different space, thinking about, well, what is interesting for that space, you know, in terms of how they see you. So I really was curious. Where I worked before at Condé Nast was a heritage media brand. I was doing a lot of work on innovation and change and pushing into digital spaces and social spaces, but it wasn't the heartland. And so to do that, to get the acumen to do that, I had to be a self-starter. I had to reach out to Google a lot and say, hey, can we partner? And Google started to say, well, why don't you come and speak at, you know, the YouTube forum we're doing, and we're doing something in Cannes, a women's dinner, come and speak at that, and we're doing something in Davos, and it's like, okay, great. And then over time, I guess, the way I presented myself meant that there were these kind of what micro opportunities that became bigger opportunities that became, let's talk about the job.
So you did always have your eye on Google then, subconsciously perhaps?
I think Google Jedi mind tricked me in just like bringing me into these spaces. It was actually very clever, because what I was interested in Google about was extending my learning and understanding around, you know, what was happening in search, what was happening in social platforms, and I think that there was this courtship that happened that became mutual. So it's a long time coming.
Good, okay. And I want to understand, so you've talked about going after the underrepresented aspects, and of course you've built this, I think it's a brilliant brand over time, and but we know that brands evolve. In fact, right, we're a Madfest, and we know that we love a good rebrand, don't we? Anybody remember when Cocoa Pops changed to Choco Krispies? It's not some aren't so some aren't so successful, but some are successful, and I think it's important that we involve brands with the times as well. So what are you wanting to stay as a constant for your brand, and what do you think will evolve to stay current with the times?
Oh, that's so interesting. I think that we're living, breathing mechanisms. Like, I don't think that we need to hang on to anything in particular. I think if you overconstruct the idea of a brand, it starts to become a bit of an albatross, and the true thing is just to be authentic. So if you look at it at a human level, when my son was born, I spoke a lot about being a mother who worked, because it was really relevant to me. It was something I was navigating in real time and was hard. And I wanted to have that, figure out where that community was. And I thought it was so amazing that you can just put those messages out there and say, this is hard, or I'm trying to juggle this, and people will come back and say, by the way, I tried this and I did that. So I think if you're really authentic about what is it that you care about and what do you need, and you put that out there, then who you are evolves in the public eye, and in the eye of your audience, I should say. And I don't think you need to be too prescriptive about that. I was also very intentional about communicating around being a mother and juggling business as well, because when I was anecdotally asking people about what it's like to show up in that space and how they managed it, there were lots of, don't over communicate it. You know, men should put pictures of their children on their desk because it makes them more approachable. Women shouldn't talk about being a mother because it makes them seem less available.
I was going to say, so I'm glad you mentioned this.
Yeah.
Were you asked not to talk about having a child?
I was advised, yeah. And so I thought, well, this is bullshit. So, you know, I just felt that it was really important for anyone coming up to not feel as nervous as I did about if I could balance, if I would be allowed, not if I could balance it, that's a different question, to be both things. So I think the evolution of your brand's really important. And one of the things I find really interesting in this new job, like, you know, I'm still the new girl, is my job at Google is to work with our biggest partners on their brand evolution. So one of the things I'm doing at the moment, leading TMT, is helping BT evolve into EE, right? And it's really kind of emotive. It's quite powerful for me as a new Googler. The other Googlers are like, oh yeah, whatever, it's fine. But they're like this iconic British brand. And we remember the marketing, if you're old enough. You remember the marketing around BT being so powerful and so strong. I can still remember the name of the characters. I can still remember, you know, within their marketing and communications, the brand was so strong. And now Google is the essential partner in transforming that brand that we've all known into something else, and it just blows my mind. And the idea that, you know, in doing that, we're helping marketing go from a cost center to a profit center. And there's this huge amount of intentional thought that goes into how we construct these brands that we put out into the world, and I'm part of that. But we don't often think about it for ourselves. How you communicate your evolution and what that attracts and how that builds your future is also vital. So for us who are in this sphere in marketing, we're doing it for other people and for other brands. There's not often a lot of time left to think about how we do it for ourselves.
And you talk about being the CEO of your brand, don't you?
Yes. Well, I think about being the CEO of me all the time because I work with a lot of businesses, and I spent a lot of time consulting and doing public speaking. And you look at how a company's structured, and you sort of think, well, probably I could run myself that way, right? You know, we have like board of directors on a company. That's probably your best friends, your mentors, all of those guys who have a different set of expertise about you. And then, you know, most brands have a brilliant CMO, and you are your best CMO, right? What do you want to share? What do you want to reposition? What do you want to dial up or dial down? It's all part of, you know, running your career. And I don't only think about it from a career perspective, I think about it from a whole life perspective, that all of this wealth of knowledge that all of you in this room will know because you've studied deeply into branding or marketing or whichever facet you run, apply it to yourself, because life's really hard. And all of those tools we learn can be kind of utilized in making life easier for ourselves.
Well, talking about that and tools, so AI, might have heard of it. In terms of personal branding, though, is it a friend or foe?
I think that's a really complex question, but for me, it's a friend, and I think it's a friend to most women. I really think that AI is going to be incredibly important for women on lots of levels, in terms of representation, if we're in the rooms and conversations, but also in terms of time. So I am in the most time-pressured moment of my life. It's crazy. Being at Google, it's fast-paced. There is so much learning. There's a really interesting thing at Google in that there is effectively a Google Translate for it being inside Google. So it's like everybody speaks in acronyms. So it's just the most expansive period of learning and most time-crushed period I've been in. And AI is really helping me turn up in that moment by saving me a ton of time.
Why? What do you do? Tell us.
Well, and it's not just me, actually. You know, I think in the UK it's like 100 hours a year is being saved on average by people who use AI. And I'm going to tell you why it's important before I tell you how I use it. Because AI can do lots of things at the moment that's quite automated and are administrative and beyond for us, that allows us to dial up our emotional intelligence. And I think what AI is doing for me is giving me more space, more capacity, more energy for what is really important for me, which is emotional intelligence. And telling brand stories in any level is about emotional intelligence. So any time I save in organizing my calendar, before I see the CEO of a brand, I usually read their business report, their annual report. Now AI can summarize that for me, and then I just go to the page that I need rather than reading the whole report. All of that time allows me to think about deeper connections. I don't want to spend all of my time doing that stuff. What I really want to do is think about what is the narrative of this next conversation or the next post or the next talk that I'm doing, and that is richer stuff. So from a productivity perspective and from an emotional intelligence perspective, which by the way requires energy, it's incredibly helpful for me.
Allows you to be more authentic, you could say.
Yes.
And talking about, you said, like, just be authentic. And I love it when people say this. I'm like, that makes out as if it's easy to just be yourself and be authentic. And we know that it can be sometimes challenging. So, you know, we talk about being your authentic self and bringing your whole self to work, yet we know there's a lot of fear around getting things wrong. So what's your thought? Do you have any tips on how you show up?
Giving enough tips? I don't know. Tell me if you want more tips. I have had an turn about bringing your whole self to work. I think that being authentic and bringing your whole self to work are not a zero-sum game. I think authenticity is the most important thing. To be true to yourself, to learn to advocate for yourself, to, particularly in the spaces that we operate in around brand and comms and so on, surface your voice because you're going to help with the audience that looks like you and so on. But I don't think that means every facet of yourself has to be present on your choice, because I think sometimes it's exhausting. And sometimes, even if it's not exhausting, it's quite powerful to just have something that you love that is separate to.
And set your boundaries, basically.
Yeah, I think setting boundaries. And I don't think that means that you're not being authentic. It's just you're giving to this point as opposed to, you know, the whole kit and caboodle. So, but I do think that finding ways to be authentic and not code switch, particularly as women, you know, when I started in traditional media sort of 20 years ago, giving some of my age away, it was the women that were in leadership at the time, who were few and far between, sort of had to, or felt they had to, emulate masculine traits. And it was just a losing game, even for the really, really talented women in that space, because eventually it's not going to work. Eventually the mask will slip, or you can never be a better version of a man than a man, right? You can be the best version of a woman and have no competition in that space. So I think that work to be authentic in whoever you are is the work, is the most important thing, particularly for the spaces that we occupy, where we are also representing voices of different communities.
And talk to me about the mask slipping. So you have to know that Vanessa is really upping the ante at Google in terms of dress sense.
Not today, but
significantly. I turn around and she's there in like a runway dress, and everybody else is in like flip-flops and hoodies. So, like, but do you ever just want to put on a pair of like joggers or like No, you don't, do you? I can see by your face. No.
This is the most dressed down that you will see me. No, you know what? First of all, I find this hilarious because going to Google is the most dressed down I've ever gone to work, and everyone's like, wow. And I'm like, I'm in flat shoes, please, guys. Calm down. I think that clothes are really important, and not in the way that they're marketed to us. I think that how you dress is often a political act. It's often, I don't dress for anyone else. I definitely don't dress for men. I don't really even dress for other women. I dress for how I feel and what I need in that day. So sometimes It's a little bit like wearing good underwear. It sort of changes your posture, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes if I have a tricky meeting, if you see me in red lipstick and a heel in the day, it means I've probably got something tough to,
You mean
to get through.
business?
Yeah,
That's when we know. Okay,
and
good.
so I think it's all about how you make yourself feel for the things that you need to lean into, and not about anyone else. And then the confidence that's exuded from that means people think, oh, you look amazing. And really you're like, I'm honestly like, I did not put moisturizer on my heels today, guys. It's really bothering me.
But there's sometimes pressures, right? So I'll be really honest. I spoke on a Pride panel last week, and because I wore heels and a dress, I had people come up to me afterwards and ask, sorry, are you straight? And I just told my coming out story on stage. So I was like, well, you clearly weren't listening, first of all. And secondly, like, okay, so like, should I have turned up in a jumpsuit? Or, I feel sometimes we feel pressured to, I guess, dress for our audience and for the occasion.
2024, man. Like, we don't have to conform to any of those things. And I think it's really important that you show up as you and show that there is diversity in each of our communities. It's really important. And I was thinking about this, at the moment I'm sort of in deep immersion in all things Google, and I'm kind of obsessing about YouTube. And I was looking at the array of voices represented on YouTube as someone who comes from traditional media, where traditionally it's one kind of voice that comes through. And I moved to the UK in the 80s, and I remember being really struck by how narrow the representation from, because I was born in Africa, which is a black country. You don't feel like there is no division by race. There are other things going on. Then I grew up in the Caribbean, and then I came to London at 7 years old, and I was like, oh my goodness, like, where are the me's? And I remember really distinctly my family religiously crowding around the TV when Trevor McDonald was reading the news, because we all felt like this one little bit of representation, we have to get behind it. And then now, because of the power of social platforms, all of these different voices can be surfaced, they can build their own brand, they can reach people who feel that I was looking at the stats the other day for something, and 70% of people with disabilities feel they're well represented on YouTube, which is amazing. 73% of non-white people, so that's Asian, Black, mixed race, feel well represented. LGBTQ. This is a really big deal coming from where I'm coming from. So the right to these prescriptive ideas of like how we must be to be a part of a group, I think that there's this really powerful moment that we're living in where all of that can be broken down, not only for us, who sort of feel like, do I have to don this mask now because I belong to this community? But I think also for everyone else who gets to witness it from afar. So I think that we're living in this really powerful time. And one of the things I always think about as well is this idea of, this is one, I've been terrible at like signaling my tips, but your lived experience is your intellectual property, and it's extremely valuable. And the more you try to shape, shift, or mask your lived experience to fit into another paradigm, the more you weaken your intellectual property. You have to step out into the world as who you are. It's really valuable. So, yeah.
Be strong. Love that. So I know we've definitely gone over time. Sorry. One last, can I just ask you to wrap this up then? Come on. What's the legacy you want to leave? We start off with legacy. Let's end it.
Legacy, that's big. I think the feeling that everyone can be who they are confidently, and the world will give them the space rather than them feeling they need to grab the space. And that's it.
Beautiful. Brilliant. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Any questions from the audience? Oh.
Yeah. Do you
yeah.
You share that one. We've got to say, if we do 3 questions, I'm Camilla, I'm going to come to you after. Let me come to you. Say your name and your question.
Hi, I'm Gabriella. I wanted to just touch back on the masculine, feminine traits, and I wondered if you could talk to the qualities that you find are more feminine but effective in leadership position.
Firstly, I just want everyone to see Gabriella's nails. They are so
Oh,
yes.
incredible.
A personal brand points. I'm really careful about this because I think that there are really no masculine or feminine traits. They're all a construct, right? But the traits that have been traditionally associated with men are the traits that have been valued in leadership. And what I think is really interesting about this moment is all of that's disrupted. What leadership was before was this very linear thing that happened, which is top down and hierarchical. You go to the best schools, you have courage and confidence to step into these different spaces, you learn and accumulate knowledge, and you get to the top of the tree, then you look down and you tell everyone what to do, and they come to you for whatever they need support with. Now, because everything's disrupted in this moment with technology and AI, everyone's constantly learning and everything's constantly shifting. So being adaptable, being someone who can support people through shifts and difficulty, so things like empathy, being able to spot where people are struggling, so emotional intelligence, and also a certain amount of intuition become really important. Like, we don't know what's coming next. For the first time, I think, in history, the level of change is so rapid that, you know, doing a 3-year plan and a 5-year plan doesn't have the same weight as it did before. So a certain amount of the way that we're leading now is about fast adaptation, planning as much as you can, using the data, but also leading into lived experience, and I guess what some people call intuition. So a lot of and this is what I mean about the AI age, I think, being the age for women, if we grasp it collectively, because a lot of those traits, which are not singularly associated with women, we do occupy. So we really need to figure out in this moment, how do we harness that rather than hide it so that we can lean into the moment.
Thank you for that. I've got one here, Camelia.
Hi, I'm Camelia. And you mentioned authenticity being key to managing your personal brand as well as being a mother. I know that I found it extremely difficult to even announce my pregnancies at work, let alone referring to my children when I came back from maternity leave as if they were my 2 flatmates. So what I want to know is, do you see things changing, and what sort of, from the response that you received to that narrative?
Yeah. First of all, I just want to say, you have, like, honestly, when I was speaking, I kept, you've got the most infectious, bright smile. It's absolutely incredible. I see things changing. There's a little MC scratch. I think we're the change. I don't think anyone's going to change it for us, and it's really hard. And I'll tell this story quickly because I know we're at time, but when I announced my pregnancy, I just got that historic job at Vogue. So it was before I was chief business officer, and there were 10 brands at Condé Nast, and Vogue is like 50% of all of the profits. So it's a really big job, and it had never been afforded to a woman before, so it was a really big deal. And in my first year, I got pregnant. And my partner at the time, you know, in crime, Edward Enningful. So I ran the business, he ran the content. It's like, this is amazing. You know, he's my son's godfather because of the way he reacted. But I remember walking up the stairs in my building, and a woman I'd worked with for a long time stopped me and said, "Oh my God, I can't believe it. Like, you must feel so awful. We've waited all of this time, and now it's going to be so hard for another woman to get the job." And, you know, the hormones were raging, and I cried the whole way back up, because I thought the whole point of me being here is to, you know, make sure the ladder's extended, not lift it up. And how sad that somehow my having a child, which I've wanted for a really long time, is seen as like someone else's opportunity killer. And it's another reason that I thought I've got to push through the pain of this moment, and rather than hide, make sure that I'm very visibly killing it whilst having my son, right? And he came with me to so many of the events that we hosted. I posted about him regularly. I was very intentional about saying, this is not easy, but he's made me better at my job, not less good. So we just can't hide.
Amazing. We're just going to do one final quick question, because there was someone else over here. Because I've just got to do it. There was someone else that had their hand up. Are they going to be brave? If not, okay. We are going to wrap there. Can everybody put this hand together for Kay Munday and Vanessa Kingori? Thank you so, so much. What a way to wrap up the Female Leaders Club 2024. Just before you all finish, please, can you put your hands together for the amazing stage crew there, the stage crew that's been helping here, Saran, who's been stage manager, Sarah Magson, who has done all the work behind the scene on content producers. From me, Julia Linehan, we've had Ellie Edwards, Scott and Katie Street as your hosts for the 3 days. We will be back next year, bigger, brighter, bolder than ever, with more incredible guests. So one last time for Vanessa Kingori and Kay Munday, thank you all very, very much.